everybody. Welcome to this discussion, and I'm sure each one of you is looking forward to discussing points where we can look at how advertising has changed over the last 3-4 years and what is in store for all of us ahead. For the interest of the audience, the size of this advertising budgets of the panel sitting here is in excess of 500 crores. So all my media friends, I think now you'll be very interested in catching up with all of them after this session. Okay, so we have a nice mix here. The mix is of payment gateway, digital payment gateway, securities. You have broking houses. You have asset management companies, and each one of them has a different advertising strategy. And let's dive into straight away, how does this all pan out now in the last 3-4 years? See, post-COVID, a lot of things have changed, and what clearly was working a few years back has now changed and is changing very, very rapidly. So I'd like to hear from all of you one by one as to how, in your scheme of things, advertising mix has changed. How has the market priority changed for you? Many look at it as English markets versus regional markets, language markets. Does that hold true? Are you seeing priority markets shifting? And are some mediums getting slowly irrelevant in the whole scheme of things? So maybe we can start with you, Amit.
Good evening, everyone. So, if I have to take the questions, how are the media mix evolving in the last? So, definitely post the COVID era, the media budgets are more diverted towards digital modes and digital mediums, digital channels. But as a company or as a brand manager, I believe in balance. So far, though 25 to 30% of our budgets go into digital, we've also investing a lot into content, and we're slowly increasing our budgets into experiential marketing. We're creating many IPs because at some point in time we need to humanize the brand also, because we believe the touch points are also the trust points, and especially in a BFSI world where finance and trust is very important. The brand also needs to be felt by the consumers or the customers. Coming to the second question, are you looking beyond the traditional markets or the main markets? So definitely yes. If you see, I come from the broking industry or the investment industry. Post-COVID, a lot of the demat accounts have surged drastically, exponentially, if you may say, from 4 crores to 20 crores in last 4 years. So that's an exponential growth. And chunk of this growth is coming from tier 2 or tier 3 towns. So yes, we are also looking at expanding beyond tier 2 and tier 3 towns. We're working a lot onto regional content. As I said, we're creating a lot of experiential marketing. We're taking them to tier 2 and tier 3 towns, the places like Guwahati, the Ranchis, the Raipurs of the world. And do you think the traditional media? I don't think so. I believe in balance. Yes, boathism, if you may call it, both traditional as well as digital medium will be equally important for brands to create an impression amongst the consumers.
Orgo, what's your take on this?
Yeah, hi. So first, for this, I'll maybe take a trip down memory lane, right? So when we started, so there used to be a very important time just after 31st March, where in the first month in April, we will set course, okay, this is what we want to achieve, and this is how we want to achieve it in terms of media, right? So you would first have a strategy in place, and then built on a AOP, which is annual operating plan. Cut to today, do we still have a strategy? Yes. But the AOP has become very, very fluid. So when we look at it from a marketing perspective, we have input metrics which are in place, right? So that might be marketing dollars that we want to put in, right? Or technology that we might want to implement over the next, say, 24 months or 36 months. And then there are output metrics, what we want to achieve, A, as a business, B, as a brand. So those two metrics we all arrive at and we are fixed, and everything in between is fluid, right? So we might start with a marketing mix, which is A in traditional, B in digital, and C in maybe experiential. But 6 months down the line, it might completely change. So today's marketing mix is not about planning, it is more about how well you react. When I say okay, people might say okay, why do you want to have a marketing plan which is reactive in nature, right, and not preemptive in nature? It is also because first when I used to make a marketing plan, I used to have 10 competitors I used to look at. Today I might have 20 or 40, and how they behave in a digital first world also changes. So being reactive here is, I think, a great marketing skill that people should pick up, because you need to change your marketing mix depending on the industry you are, maybe 3 times in a year, right? Another part of the marketing mix that I personally think is, okay, marketing mix is defined only by 2 things. What is your product and who are your consumers, right? As their habits change, marketing dollars have to follow that funnel, right? It doesn't work, right? The whole idea is, okay, there might be traditional thoughts, right? Okay, even in digital, right? Now digital has also become traditional. There might be traditional thoughts in digital where, okay, performance marketing hai, this should be the ROI. But then there's something which is in between branding and performance, which is brand performance. So you have to keep shifting according to the market needs. Second, how your consumers are acquiring you. So that is, those are my thoughts on the mix. Yeah.
Okay, so my question to you is, you can skip this question if you tell us where should we invest so that we get quickly returns in this ever volatile market that we are facing, or else you can answer this question.
I can't answer that. No, but I think the way I see this is the shift in the media mix, right? And then if anything is relevant, I'll just share my 2 thoughts on that. If you look at last 4 years, right, what's happened is pure disruption at scale, with more content consumption going and hitting the roof. And with someone who's I've been on the agency side, now on the brand side, and I can say this with a lot of certainty that definitely the how we look at media and how we look at strategy has definitely changed. Because internet has, with massive internet penetration, it's almost become like a power and a superpower in the hands of common man, right? So more content creation is happening, more content consumption is happening, and therefore certain channels and mediums have lost relevance, or rather there's a DMU, diminishing marginal utility, and certain platforms which are on the rise, right? So because of this entire unique behavior, consumer behavior, certain formats have suddenly erupted in a very big manner. For example, vlogging, right? No one expected it to be in this fashion, but now it's so much mainstream that even serious brands like financial services are actually considering with creators. So that's the shift, I think, which we are witnessing today.
Sure. Yes, Srinivas.
So let's rewind a little bit back to 2016, because for me, I think that's a pivotal year. You had low-cost internet coming to this country. You had UPI 1.0 coming to the country. You had GST just being announced. And the first period of interest rate reduction started from 16 to 19. Now, all of this actually propelled the digital infrastructure, and then COVID was just a catalyst. Without all of this being there, I don't think we would have propelled the way we have, right? And just look at this panel. So if I have to answer from an asset management point of view, who's my customer? Because everything, like, I resonate with what Orgo said right now, that who's your customer is very important. Look at this panel. There's an investor who's doing mutual fund investments, but he's also doing MTF with the first panelist, right? He's probably using the payment gateway solutions to pay something, right? He's probably doing broking here. Somebody with a certain score and above is an ideal candidate for doing riskier products, right? and you may also have loan against mutual funds and all being supplied from somewhere. That's how a customer has evolved in last 3-4 years. Whereas you could probably have the same customer, or maybe different sets of customers in different silos, but now the same customer has access to so many different products in maybe a single application or a couple of applications. But that's the evolution which has happened. And now it's even going deeper into the smaller markets because it's easier to operate because while we have different languages, the medium of conversion is only one language, right? So everybody understands that. But the more we go to the smaller markets, we see that there are two types of investors, at least for our products now, capital market investing products, is we have the matured markets, which are the metros, where they understand that higher risk doesn't necessarily mean higher reward. It could flip. So they want to play more consistency. They want more consistent returns. Smaller markets first go to the more riskier products. And that's the challenge, how do we educate? So the marketing mix also has to evolve that way, and one fit does not work for all.
Sure. Jayanti, you just came out of a recent campaign, and these learnings would be very valuable for all the audience here in terms of what strategies you have used in your media mix to kind of take it forward.
Yeah, so we recently celebrated 25 years of TransUnion CIBIL, and we are a bureau. I mean, everyone knows about CIBIL score. We as a brand ask consumers to come and check their own CIBIL score and report as well. From a marketing mix perspective, and I think pretty much everyone has touched upon that point, that it's about finding, it's the big one of the aphorisms of marketing, right? Find your customers where they are, speak to them in a language that they understand. Keeping that in mind, I still believe, and that's pretty much the principles that we went with when we do any campaign, that print and media and print and television still hold a lot of credibility when it comes to establishing brand trust and brand authority. To me, that still remains, while digital, of course, and I think which Srinivas touched upon, is that COVID was a catalyst, but 2016 is actually when the movement started. Cheaper data, so that is when the digital movement started. What's interesting to me, and print, and I don't think print and television are going to go away anywhere. I'm a newspaper reader. I don't watch linear TV anymore, but I continue to read at least 3 newspapers every day. A lot of people here may not sort of have that behavior. So, but I think there is some evolution that is needed there, of course. We'll speak about that later. What's interesting to me is how digital is evolving. Like, while, of course, a lot of our spends are on digital today, what I have seen that over the last couple of years, since the influencer movement has also started, the way we are looking at digital has completely changed. So today there is no blanket digital anymore ki, agency ko bol diya hai ki chalo, we will do programmatic or we will do affiliates only, which is, or we will sort of look at an outbrain or taboola, which is what we used to look at earlier. So today we look at where our consumers asking the questions that we want to answer. So we sort of spend our time and effort looking for those consumers, and that is when we go after those specific channels. I mean, we might find them on social, on Instagram, we might find them on Reddit, on Quora, we find a lot of consumers on search, of course. So that is how we are spending sort of our digital. So to me, there is some amount of marketing spends that will continue to be on print and television. That is something that will change, I think, depending on the kind of campaign that you're looking to run. But our daily digital campaigns, which is where our bread and butter is coming from, that is something that is changing at a pretty fast pace, and that is very interesting to watch.
Arvind, your thoughts on this?
On print and digital specifically, or
The overall
question.
Media mix and what is changing. See, I think for you, personal finance and consumer finance is something that is, it's going to be an ever-present story, and therefore you have to reach through all the touch points, and therefore I think all mediums do remain relevant, but where do you prioritize at the end of the day?
So I'll probably start with what you had asked right at the beginning, right, which is post-COVID, and somewhere I think Srini also said, you know, there's this whole aspect of us being in a slightly VUCA-ish world over the last decade or so. I think what's happened as a result of that is consumers have now sort of gotten this, and plus with the sort of exposure that you do tend to have from a consumer's point of view. I'm telling you all consumers' point of view, and our consumer is tier 2, tier 3, tier 4. So when as you speak with them, you do realize that their demands as consumers is no different from, let's say, what a metro consumer seeks, right? So which is why you see an expansion of retail footprint and all of that. Everyone talks about tier 2 and 3. बहुत fashionable है, सब लोग बोलते हैं कि हमारा business वहीं से होता है, right? But it's also very fragmented. And I think what's really happened is there's a mindset shift. They wanted, so one is more, better, fast, cheaper, and I want it now, right? So I think post-COVID has sort of really brought together that now wala element, saying, "आप अभी sanction करो तो मैं हूँ आपके साथ में. Otherwise, I'm going somewhere else," right? So that's really the mindset shift, if I were to say. It's more we want stuff here and now. I'm being very broad-based, of course, in the way I'm talking this through. I don't think the fundamentals of how we build brands have changed. You still are building, your awareness, you're trying to tell your brand story. In fact, we are a post-COVID brand. I mean, we were born 3 years ago. So we're the youngest kid in the block. So, I mean, but we've still gone to same fundamental principles of segmentation, targeting, positioning, जो कोटलर में लिखा होता है, वही है. Of course, we've added a bit of Seth Godin in it so that, there is this slightly more modern way of approaching it, saying that, brands are not just lived through advertising, but by also experiences, various touch points and stuff like that. So we've tried to weave in and bring up a bit between all of that. I think what we've done is, so one is we've got awareness right at the top, and then at the bottom, you're really trying to see how you can build engagement. And I think what's really, really important as a currency in banking and financial services is the element of trust, right? And trust means different things to different kind of consumers. So for the consumer who we talk to, trust is the fact that if I see you or if I know something about you, I'm going to go and first see if there is a branch in my region or in my city. If not, then I'm not going to trust you as much. So our media choices are governed by more customer back. What is it that they do, their 24-hour clock. And of course, within that, you can nuance it. You can nuance how to optimize television, how do you get better attribution, how do you optimize for digital. There is more nuance on digital today as we speak, bandwidth, so and so, right? So YouTube becoming, every time Google will show you this slide that they're the 5th largest, 4th largest, 3rd largest channel in the country, and so on. So, but that's real. And it's about how do you really make choices within that, with given the amount of money that you have, best bang for buck, and it kind of checks in when it comes to you delivering what is your material brand metrics. And yeah, to some extent, of course, performance kind of underscores a lot of it. We are on a different, sort of a, how shall I say, school of thought when it comes to performance. But broadly speaking, I'm saying we've stuck to pretty much the basic with a bit of nuances on the way the consumer, expectations have evolved, and trying to service that to the best of our ability.
Sure. I want to touch upon how we measure the spends that we do on advertising. And of course, each one has its own benchmarks. But if we speak about, for example, digital as a medium, it started with impressions, and then it turned out to how many clicks can a particular site deliver, moving on to cost for acquiring a lead, cost per acquisition. I mean, what's next? Where do you stop that, and does that really mean something for you when you sit down with your review team and look at effectiveness of a campaign? And basically when you say धंधे की बात करें तो what is the outcome of that? Open for anybody to kind of contribute to this thought, not necessarily in any sequence, but I'm sure all of you all go through this exercise after a campaign is delivered, that at the end, has it resulted in sales offtakes, and how do you measure that? What is the next measure that you will probably look at when it comes to these kind of campaigns?
Can I go first? Okay. We saw some very interesting ads before we all walked in, right? Now, after that sort of thought into an advertisement campaign and what you've done, ultimately, I'm sure at some point of time you're going to look at paper kitna big raha hai, right? Subscription kitna upar ja raha hai. So at the end of it, it's all that matrix. That you have done something over a period of time, what happens. Now, some products are touch and feel, some products will deliver immediate results. Certain products, especially when it comes to investment products, it's not going to happen immediately. It's going to take time. Unless you're bringing a product at a time when market is absolutely ripe. Like one of the examples during COVID was when the international tech investing world was really delivering great results. And we launched a product called FANG. It sold like hotcake, right? But investing is a behavioral journey. It doesn't happen like immediately. Most of the times people do invest when there's a certain mindset change, there's a goal change, there is a milestone which has happened in your own life, age, you get into 30s to 40s and all of that. So it is somewhere a slightly long term. If you make something which is more behavioral in aspect, if you have a campaign like that, you got to look at like a classic movie, right? I mean, if somebody's talking about that movie 10 years later also, which means what you made, and if you keep talking about that consistently over a period of time, then that's going to resonate back, right? And that will result into numbers at some point of time. So it's a patience game when it comes to investment product. It will take sometimes 2 years, sometimes it could be immediate. Very hard to say for every campaign, it will be different. But it's best to look upon that over a period of time. Does it really impacted your brand value? Is your AUM growing? Is the number of customers who are connecting with you, investing with you is growing? If that's at work, then largely everything what you're doing is falling into place.
And also, I wanted to ask you, all of you, that see, in today's world, I think using influencers and social media handles, social media as a platform is extremely important in your communication mix. How do you measure effectiveness of, let's say, a batch of influencers you kind of deploy for a campaign or for a particular project that you have in mind? How do you measure the success of that?
So I think we were speaking about this, I think, before we came in for this. So today, I think one thing, I don't know if that works for the rest of the panel here, but I think today the CFO is the marketeer's best friend. Today, because they are constantly asking you, huh? Exactly, I mean, full BFF, what is the ROI, what are the kind of metrics that we are tracking. So to that point, I think, and of course, CPC, CPM was a long time ago, given that most of us are in complete e-commerce journeys, like, when it comes to D2C brands, you have your complete ROI that you can measure exactly. But of course, there are more nuances. And I think we also spoke about long-term impact, right? So what is the CLTV per consumer? How many of these consumers are actually coming back to the platform? Specifically for CIBIL score and report, something that we also look at is that after they check the report, what is it that they go on to do? Did they apply for another loan? Did they pay off, some loan amount? Did they settle a credit card? So that is something that we look at. And coming to influencers, see, social media is very trackable. You have, if you're running ads, you have your posts, it's very trackable for us. We manage multiple social media platforms. Influencers, to me, is still something that you need to figure out at what point in the funnel or for which campaign specifically are you using the influencers. Bottom of the funnel influencers are still, I think, a long way to go. But top of the funnel with the right kind of mix, and I see a lot of potential with regional influencers that the kind of content they bring to the table. Because somewhere I think urban influencers is still a little saturated today. But yeah, I think top of the funnel influencers do add some amount of this thing to the table. But yeah, the KPI is still there, I think need to be established with our BFF, the CFO.
Sure. Yes, Varun.
Yeah, I'll try to answer both questions quickly. On the first part, no. So there are now metrics which are already there, CPC bolo, CPM bolo, CAC bolo, whatever you call it. So I'll not delve into that. So what I delve into is whenever we are looking at results, we divide it into two parts, a 30 feet result and a 30,000 feet result, right? So here I will focus on the 30 feet result के अगले 30 दिन में जो मेरे को result देगा, right? So in some cases CLTV बाहर चला जाता है because depending on the product you have, CLTV might work over 12 months or might work over say 36 months or more. So how we do it is कि digital marketeers or performance marketeers, right, usually own the whole funnel. What we have seen is, or what we have experimented and it has worked for us here and also in my previous role, is we have compartmentalized it, right? When you move from impressions to CPC to maybe then CAC and then retention, we compartmentalize into two people, right? What it actually does is it avoids one person dressing up A metric because B metric is not working. So there is a team which is working on getting the best guy in and the most of the best guys in, right? And then there is another guy working, is the person who has walked in. Can we walk him through where he becomes a paying customer? So that's how we look at that metric. Also, the other thing that we do here is, instead we also have started obsessing over not the right customer, but the wrong customer. The whole idea is in India, we will all know that niches in India are as big target audiences as whole countries, right? So the whole idea is that if we can identify this is not a customer that I want, right? Where did he or she come from? Is it the content to blame that we have shown? Is it the platform that we have used to blame, or is it just spillover? So that has helped us a lot in getting our other ROIs correctly. So it is each dollar I can save from getting a customer I don't want in helps. Now on the influencer part, no, previously I've been part of a brand which is just built on influencer marketing. It was in travel, right? So influencers are not dependent on scale. Influencers are dependent on where you are on your brand journey. So when we started with very small influencers who were very technical in nature. And then we went on to large influencers who have 5, 10, 15 million things. But what you need to arrive at influencers is a differentiation between costly and expensive, because they are not the same thing. If something is costly, if an influencer is costly, right, it is costly because of the input metric or the output metric they will give you. Like maybe a bag of extreme high quality, right, it might be costly. But expensive is where you're paying a lot of money but not getting value out of it. So at least me and my team look at influencer marketing or any kind of outreach marketing from a costly and expensive angle. So costly is not always bad, but expensive is surely to revisit. So that's how we look at it. So hence somebody who takes maybe 10,000, 15,000 for an interaction versus somebody who takes 1.5 lakh for an interaction. 1.5 lakh is costly, but might still make more sense than the 15,000 influencers. So that's how we look at it.
Yeah, Varun.
No, I think my fellow panelists have covered all of this very well, and you articulated it very well actually. So there's not much to add after what he mentioned. But there's one thing is for sure is the metrics of CPL, CPLC, and all of it has moved from just being a metric to now business conversations actually in the rooms. So now while it might be a CPL conversation, but now it's about कितना lead आया, उसका quality क्या है, उसका conversion क्या है, उसका is it something to more sustainable for the business and something to revisit again. So the conversations have shifted. Sure. So it's not just now matrix, but now largely how it impacts the business. The second thing I'd like to just add is that influencer marketing, I mean, all of us have been discussing of the fact that how to get ROI of it, and creators are also getting creative with how they deliver value. Actually, I must highlight that in the sense of how ROI then is calculated in the sense, especially in financial services for account openings, right? So they've also evolved their model in the sense of how they deliver. So that was another thing which I just wanted to add here.
Anil, just one point, for the mutual fund industry, influencers are not allowed at individual AMCs. Of course, at the AMFI level, we do work, and that's uh, expensive but or costly, but made a lot more impact, right? So we, the day that thing went out of the window, we had to really re-innovate. We had to go back to our drawing board and said, what is that we need to do to be in this game, but at the same point of time, we cannot use external help. And we actually started focusing back on our own content, that what we can create, how we can create. In fact, to the audience, I'll just say, just go and look at Mutual Fund Ki Kahaniyan, what we've been releasing as episodes. It's our own employees, and actually I'm shocked to see how good they are as actors. Maybe we'll create our own influencers.
Just to add, I think great point. So actually, we took an inward approach, to influencer marketing. So while there's a lot of regulation of not working with more than 1 million, creators and all of it, we started using our own employee faces to be the faces for the brand on social media. So you'll see a bunch of people actually now acting out, now also talking about our research report in full its stride from the horse's mouth, straight up, right? And so much so now we started to also look at creating, how can we create digital twins of them, of the same employees, and keep training them so that a lot of content at scale can be created. So that's where it goes to the point of the ROI coming in, right? Again, without having to spend time to sit, record, put the person's time. So
Yeah, so actually a lot of it is actually covered in what you just mentioned, Srinivas. I wanted to actually ask that BFSI being such a regulated industry and content play is something that is becoming increasingly important in our whole scheme of things. How do you tackle that? So you partially answered that, but is there scope for innovation in content besides within the framework of what you are currently operating at? And this will also be true for, I think, insurance as a category. Though we don't have a member from an insurance industry in the panel today, but IRDA regulates the insurance piece, AMFI, SEBI regulate a lot of your financial products. So how do you kind of tackle that and yet play with content?
See, there's a saying in civil aviation that regulations are written in blood.
Sorry?
Regulations are written in blood.
Yeah.
So when it comes to money, it's extremely important that how are you going to safeguard those interests. So from a regulatory point of view, when it comes to this subject, there are guardrails and we have to be within that. Now, being within that doesn't mean that it limits your innovation. It just tells you that this is wrong, don't do it, right? So as long as you're aware that you don't have to cross this line and yet be innovative in nature and come up with campaigns, different campaigns, it will resonate. Now, I'll give you one example. Most of us in this room, if I have to just ask, how many of you do SIPs? Just show of hands, please. Say about 60-65% of the audience is doing SIPs, right? Now, if I have to ask everyone that what does it mean for you, everybody's going to have a different meaning, but in a way, it is their own small dream which they are investing in, correct? So when we came up with our SIP campaign, we coined it as Sapna in Progress, SIP, Sapna in Progress. Now, that's a line which cuts through everything and it resonates. Now, that didn't needed regulations mein hum nahi kar sakte. It was just about simplifying. The most effective campaigns ever made are the ones which resonate because they are simple and they connect. So at ground level se agar aap baat karoge, I think I agree with what he says. You have a 30-foot view and then a 30,000 feet view. So if you know both these and what you need to operate in between, I think it's more or less achieved. So having guardrails around the regulations of what you can't do actually makes a lot more sense, because then you know that okay, this is a subject matter you should not get into. और सबसे बेस्ट चीज़ ये हो जाता है ना कि when some agency comes and gives you a pitch, ये करना है, we know बस ये नहीं कर सकते. You're not mulling over saying कि करना है नहीं करना है and all of that. It just नहीं करना है. Let's look at something else. I think that is more power.
Sure.
So I would add. So though we come from regulated industry, sometimes we believe कि constraints is the mother of all inventions. So in this constraint also you could do a lot of innovation. like for example, finance means complex. We've started doing a comic series for kids. So how do you simplify? Because what is finance? Finance you need to simplify and give clarity. Clarity will give confidence, and then confidence will build trust. So that is what we are endeavoring. So I believe that though we are regulated, but that gives us a lot of scope to experiment and do innovative work is what I feel. And sorry, I missed explaining the earlier question on the measurement part. Sorry, digressing on that part, but I had a completely different view on the measurement, so I thought I'll take it last, but another question came up. I believe we're too obsessed with measurements, CPC, conversion, and I think brands today are more focused on performance and immediate results and are losing sight on a long-lasting brand building. Like take for example Nike. Nike is a brand who stopped investing into brand building post-COVID and went D2C and did a lot of performance, and you see the result, now the sales are plummeting like anything. So as a brand, if you're building, you shouldn't build a brand for tomorrow or day after. You need to build brand for forever. Like for example, KitKat has been talking, have a break, have a KitKat for 40 years now. So it's not a brands are built overnight. So I think the parameter that we need to be measured is penetration. How much of the customer total addressable market that's available, how much have we penetrated? And performance or anything, and for that matter, a customer, who are your customer right now, you should build brand for the customers who are not in the market. So I think those are the parameters. There's another important parameter that we forget to measure is brand salience. Brand salience is, does the customer think about your brand at the time of purchase? Does it come to your mind? So that is building on the physical and mental availability are the two parameters that as a brand manager or a brand custodian we need to work on, rather than the CPC and clicks, because they're too short term. They'll not help you bring a long-term brand, is what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Sure. Jayanti, you mentioned about, it was very heartwarming to listen to you when you mentioned that you still believe a lot in having traditional mediums still as an important part of your entire communication mix, and that gets me to perhaps the last point of this healthy discussion, which is around what is moving forward. What do you guys feel is the role of traditional media products, let's say a newspaper, a television channel? You mentioned that they are here to stay, they're not going to go away. But they need to evolve, they need to change with changing times. And therefore, where do you see things moving forward in terms of television and newspapers, especially newspaper products, where the young generation, there is a perception that they are not picking up the newspaper at all. And also I want to know from feedback from you guys, because it's extremely valuable for the media fraternity, that what should traditional mediums do to bring about this change so that it becomes more relevant to your choice of media products? We can start with you, Arvind.
So I think television is okay. I mean, because it's well measured, there's bark, there's been enough debate around whether the people system works from a statistical significance, etc. But I think if you keep that aside, I think there are enough and more folks in the industry who will tell you why it works, including data. I think the problem comes in when you're trying to select from the rest. The last IRS survey was what, 5-6 years ago? Does anyone remember? So maybe even longer, right? So perhaps a decade. So in God we trust, all others must bring data. Wo to hai nahi. So in that absence, then you go with some degree of gut, right? So then you use some sort of surrogates to figure out what can be done. Again, we've chosen a very customer-backed design. We interact very deeply with our customers through our physical footprints, and we measure pretty much everything we do. So we look at the kind of lifts we get, and what medium does well, and all of that. But I think we found among the traditional mediums, I think the guys who are really innovating well, I'd say is radio, because in tier 2 and 3, because they are not thinking about their medium as being constrained as, look, I'm just audio. Vis-a-vis, I'm able to curate something for you that gets you to engage with the community, and they do that as their own outreach. And it kind of works for you because when you, lo and behold, measure it, piche ja karke, so then my analytics team tells me that ki, isme to we got a 200 basis points lift in salience, which is valuable, right? I mean, because you're not trying to conquer the entire country on its whole, and with the kind of budgets, while you said 500 crores between all of us put together, usko aap baant do, and if you count it clearly as, if there is any media planners in the house, who would say कि cost per contact के हिसाब से कहाँ पे medium ये पूरा मतलब we will not be able to reach the country even once.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay, that's really where it is. So with that kind of budget constraint, then you got to be really sharp about your choices. So within that, then if you're trying to permeate into a city, let's say I'm trying to get to Muzaffarpur, ठीक है वहाँ पर मुझे जाना है. So I need to be able to reach out to a bunch of folks and then tell them that I exist. And clearly there, the point that Amit was making, कि यार salience बढ़ाओ. Fundamentals, again, basics of brand building. If one way to do that, then you'd go and check in, okay, after doing this activity, has that really led to something? Has it built salience? Has it built some consideration? Or has it built some vector of trust? Right, you're going to go and check that. So some of these things they check in. Today, I think everybody's become very measurable. Everyone knows how to measure. BFSI, it's phenomenal the way we can measure. I'm not from the industry. I walked into BFSI like 4 years ago. But it's amazing the level of measurement, thanks to folks like TU as well, with the kind of measurement that you can get. It's pretty insane on how you can triangulate pretty much everything, right? So with that, I think clearly, sorry, so my rant was pretty long, but if I were to come back to print, right, specifically, I think somewhere it's a bit like कि मुझे दिख रहा है but मैं कर नहीं रहा हूँ. Like I can see the opportunity but I'm not really going there. Well, yeah, we do get one of these, like a one-off proposal where you're trying to do something with like the local community there, or trying to do like a slightly bigger piece. But when you try to put it all together in a piece of paper, it's not starting to make sense because it's not bite-sized. So how do you really make it more consumable? And how do you, like I get a lot of reach outs. I absolutely don't have the time or the bandwidth to kind of reply to any of those guys. But the common thing that I do see is the fact that none of it is looking at. So when we talk to a consumer, you're talking about a customer-backed design, right? So which means you're trying to service that kirane ka dukandar in Salem, right? As an example. And usko aapko aapka customer banana hai. So I'd say the same thing is true for us as well. So if there is 1 degree of a double click that somebody does saying that, hey, maybe this might make sense for you, given that this is what you're trying to do, and what we're doing is pretty much out there for the world to consume. Right? It's pretty much out there. So I think even if that double click happens, I think it's a bit by bit when it comes to mediums like print because I did see that as a question. I think it's really about being able to break it down bit by bit and go one by one. It's tough, man. I'm not going to lie.
Sure. Yes, Jackie.
I mean, I completely agree with what Arvind said, right? That television is here to stay because the measurements are pretty solid. We haven't done radio in the recent past, something that we are trying to explore as well. Print, see, I think to Amit's point, when it comes to brand building, right, we have to sort of put in the kind of effort to build a brand, and that when I say effort, I mean budgets as well. However, what I see, and over the last couple of years, while print and television do remain a part of the media plan, how often we use them. Then it becomes कि साल में एक central brand campaign करना है. That's when you use, these traditional media. Otherwise, your day-to-day is digital, and I think that's where print and television or even radio, I don't know, outdoors, of course, that's also something that we're not even speaking about. They have to up their game, trying to understand how can they enter the daily performance or the daily campaign scene as well, because that's pretty much where, I think for all of us, that's pretty much where all the spends are going. You do one brand campaign a year, that's about it. Yeah, I mean, print measurement is something we were speaking about it earlier as well. I mean, we've been trying QR codes, we've tried a whole lot of other things. We've tried to triangulate data as well, saying that we ran this campaign for this long. We've seen impact on brand lift, yes, over time after running campaigns, specifically running regional campaigns as well. But convincing the CFO that, hey, listen, this is something that for long-term impact we need to run, I have to admit it's getting tougher and tougher as we speak. So that is something I look to sort of the industry to try and see what are the kind of innovations that they can bring to the table.
Sure.
I haven't seen any print media explore the interactive option yet. Some bit has happened from front page and an ad campaign, but I haven't seen that while, say, a major head of state or say a manager we have interviewed on your YouTube channel, and the same interview then comes in a print form on the paper. Can it be interactive that the guy can actually watch it there? Right? It's a small integration, but could work. Right? So while the content is already available, why not take it out on the print form also? Because remember one thing, while we go through so many WhatsApp messages, information, pings, app pushes, notification, all the news, next day you're still reading the paper to know what happened.
Yeah, because
as an analysis.
starts and ends.
Now, if you just take one step ahead to make it interactive on certain sections, try for certain sections and see how it goes. If it works, great. Give my royalty check later, but at least try.
No, it's a very valuable input that you have given here, of course. Yes, Varun.
Yeah, so something we were discussing backstage as well. I think print as a medium is here to, television is here to stay definitely, and they've been innovating in their own share with a lot of things, especially financial news channels and so on and so forth. But with print, format needs to, the role and format needs to be challenged, I think, to a good extent, right? And also certain rigidity needs to sort of come down for it to be relevant in today's this thing. I open a print newspaper next day after reading the news and knowing the news for an in-depth coverage and maybe something like a BTS perspective of what's actually happening, and for something exclusive knowledge, right, or wisdom per se. So I think right from that to, like right now I was telling you, I'm in the market right now to look at a fixed property on regional to national newspapers, talking about what Motila Soul stands for, which is research, and how do I go about highlighting, and that itself is a challenge, personally I can tell you, right, to get that out. So that rigidity needs to come down so that a lot more brands can also come back to trying and experimenting with. Yeah.
Your final comments on this?
Yeah. So I would actually say that print is for brand building, right? So, and it brings its own prestige and authenticity with it, right? And how I would explain that is, if you look at all the top brands which are digital first in India, if you take anybody who is 500 million worth or more, right? Why do they use print? They have all been built digitally. They have all the digital reach possible, right? Some of their apps have more reach than maybe two of our top publications put together, but they still go on print. So if it is about long-term brand building, authenticity, people still fall back on print, right? But it is to understand, okay, what does your brand need, right? And maybe it will keep getting a shrinking share of my media budgets, but it will still have, because what print can't drive, right, inherently, because how it is frequency, right? The whole idea is that even I do a great ad, if I do it every day of the week, right, you will only see it 30 times a month, right? Whereas something which I've invested in content and I want to show you 300 times over the next 30 days, there are other mediums only which is possible. So it is basically how the format is, right? So do I think it is going to go away? No. But will it only shrink back to the most relevant and brand building and prestige kind of place? Yes, I do think that.
Sure. Yes, with your final thoughts.
Yeah. So traditional media is not going away, I agree with, because what it does, it lends credibility. So for example, a brand, if it advertises on an IPL, the general consensus among the consumer is it's a big brand. That's precisely he could advertise. Or if a brand does a front page print ad, the general consensus is a big brand. So that's credibility. Today, again, also, if you see a spokesperson, will always ask whether that interview is getting published on a digital medium or in print, because they want their interviews to be still published in a print medium because that lends credibility. The only thing innovation other colleagues have covered, I think print needs to be affordable also for smaller brands like us. If it's affordable, I think innovation brand managers can always figure out.
Sure. Well, thank you everybody. It has been a very engaging session, and thank you for all your valuable feedback, and I'm sure all of us sitting here have gathered these inputs, gathered feedback, learned a lot from what you have mentioned today. Thank you so much for this session. Thank you everybody.